You are muted. Oh.
I was muted. I'd like to start today with reading an acknowledgement of the land that we're on. I haven't done that in a little while, and I want to always remind us that we are on the traditional homelands of the Puyallup tribe. The Puyallup people have lived on and stewarded these lands since the beginning of time and continue to do so today. We recognize that this land acknowledgement is one small step toward true allyship, and we commit to uplifting the voices, experiences, and histories of the Indigenous people of this land and beyond. So welcome today. And I was trying to put the Zoom norms and community norms in the chat. Somehow I can't do it, so I'll figure that out and I'll talk about that later. But today I have two things on my mind. There are actually two celebrations. One is Juneteenth and the other is Father's Day. So they're both being celebrated on Sunday, and I just have a couple thoughts. So Sunday the 19th marks the 157th anniversary of Juneteenth, also known as Freedom Day, Emancipation Day, Liberation Day, and Jubilee Day. And on this day in 1865, 2 years after the formal issue of the Emancipation Proclamation, the last enslaved peoples living in Galveston, Texas, were finally made aware of their status as free people. Approximately 250,000 Black people were liberated on this day, and the following year, the first Juneteenth celebration was held, commemorating the day on which the last enslaved peoples were freed. Today, it's widely celebrated as a holiday, and there are some fine events happening in our county that we can put in the chat later on. If you know of any that you want to encourage people to attend, please add them. And it's important to honor the resilience and accomplishments of Black Americans. And at the same time, this acknowledgement reminds us of the legacy of slavery in the insidious persistence of systemic racism, including the overrepresentation of Black people among those experiencing homelessness. As a coalition of people committed to action to end homelessness, we're aware of the statistics about disproportional representation. We also know it's important to examine the ways our homelessness, quote, system may perpetuate the racism that causes disparities and how this system could be changed. Today, we'll hear from Michael Craw and Carolyn Wise about a racial equity study project related to coordinated entry, and we'll have the opportunity in breakout groups to talk about ways to improve coordinated entry. The effort to understand the way systems work and don't work for specific targeted groups is difficult but essential work. Juneteenth reminds us to celebrate one another in a commitment to the work as individuals, participants in a particular agency, and members of this coalition. And just a thought about Father's Day. It's organized as a complement to Mother's Day in the early 20th century, actually by a woman in Spokane. This day reminds us to pay attention to our relationships as fathers, as people with fathers, and as people thinking about fathers living on the streets. On this last point, here's another opportunity to reflect on the resources, processes, and systems that are needed by single fathers living homeless, on ways to connect and reconnect fathers living homeless to their children, and the challenge of keeping families together when family shelters are full. So celebration, reflection, challenge, and hope for a light on the path that often seems dim and uncertain. I'm reminded in closing by young poet laureate Amanda Gorman. She said, "There is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it." So welcome everyone today. For those of you who are new, I will go over a few norms that we have in our meeting so that you're understanding how we work. Some of them are obvious if you're a Zoom veteran, so we won't spend a long time on them. But since I couldn't post them, I'll just say them. We ask that you mute yourself when you're not talking, that if you're doing any other activity, answering the phone or something that you need to do during this time, because you may be an expressive speaker and use your arms and hands a lot when you talk, it's good also to stop your video during that period. So we make those two requests. And we also ask that when you want to make a comment or ask a question, that you use the raised hand feature on the Zoom. We're able to keep track of people and make sure we see people who are interested in speaking. And also, since Teresa and Cece are co-hosting today, I think they'll probably be able to see any hands that are up, but that really is our best way of making sure people have a chance to speak. We also use the chat function as a real networking tool here. It may not be the same in other groups you're in, but ask any questions there, make any comments there, carry on conversations there. It's not seen as disrespectful to the speakers. It's our way of making sure we get a lot done. And in terms of our community norms, I'm just going to read 3 of them this morning. We have about 8 or 9, and so we'll make those available when I can do it. But to begin, our norms and our commitment is to lead with a racial equity lens, to be aware of power dynamics, and to challenge concepts, not people, and listen to learn. So with that, let me invite new people or people who've been away for a while to use the raise hand function and let us know who you are and if you represent a group or a part of a group. It's not a time for a long introduction. We'll have time to speak in small groups later, but to let us know you're here and that you're what kinds of interests you have. So if anybody is new, just raise your hand and we'll recognize you. Well, I don't think I'll wait longer for that, but if you're new and would just like to tell us about yourself in the chat, please feel free to do that. If you'd like to contact any kind of agency or person involved in something, just make that note as well. And I see that Garrett has posted the community norms in the chat, so you can take a look at those there. And I'll turn it to you, Teresa, I believe.
I unmuted instead of muting. Anyway, there it is. Thank you for those thoughts, and I love that little part of that poem. This week on the streets, for anyone who's new, even though no one introduced themselves as new, that may be because we have shy people in here. So know that you are welcome to this table. And if you have some insight about the street, something that's happening, this is a time we set aside for people who are doing outreach or people who are living on the streets or people who are interacting to tell us a little bit about what they're seeing. So I hope one of you folks who do this a lot will demo that so that other people will feel free to join in. All right, I'm going to have to prime the pump. So here's here on G Street, we had a meeting of the neighbors in this community, and it was a little disheartening. Our street has become quite chaotic because of the sweeps that have been going on in the city. People have been landing here, and we had my daughter-in-law drove up to deliver vegetables, and someone who was doing a sex worker came up to approach her, and it just felt like, oh my goodness, can we have just a little bit of peace, as we did several months ago before all the sweeps. So a lot of the people who have been living here for really, some of these people have been living in their vehicles here for decades, and some people have been here for over a year. There are people who came here during the first part of the pandemic. Those people are getting squeezed out by people who are intimidating them and bringing a lot of commerce onto our street. So I'm a little ticked off, and I'm not sure quite what to do, but that's what's happening on my street. And Sally.
What I'm seeing are individual tents. There was one on the parking strip near Tacoma Community House yesterday. I didn't walk by there today, so I don't know if it's still there. And there's a larger one between 11th and 12th on L, which is right by the construction site and all the construction vehicles for the building that's being built at the corner of 12th and MLK. So what I believe is happening is, as the sweeps continue, people are scattering into single tent or 2 tent kind of little groupings, but they're showing up in places that they haven't been before, and in sometimes those are dangerous places, like the one near the construction.
Thank you. And then I see Jeffrey has his hand up.
3 people out of 34th and Pacific ended up in Veterans Village. That's good news. And they're very concerned at 34th and Pacific about the sweeps, and they're worried about the bad element moving in. They have a no vacancy sign again back on their entrance. I'm seeing a lot of solo people moving during the day, which is unusual. Usually they move at night. So I think yesterday I saw 5 different individuals or couples moving along 38th, Pacific, and 56th.
Thank you for that. I see one raised hand. Where is it? Oh, that was just, you just took yours down, Jeffrey. Anyone else want to add something, what you're seeing on the street?
I don't know how to raise my hand.
Go ahead, Richard.
A couple things. The sweep at 11th and Marine View Drive has pretty much been completed. There was one vehicle, a van, and his possessions that was still pending movement. 3 or 4 of the vehicles moved 1 block and are now on Marine View Drive. So, and 1 trailer is stuck in the bushes there. The 2 pending sweeps, one I think is scheduled, I don't have the notice, but is on the 21st, is the encampment under the 11th Street Bridge. A month ago, we counted 48 vehicles. It appears to be quite a few less than that right now, although we did not do a count. And as with a lot of vehicular encampments, it's difficult to do a people count because people are in the vehicles, and I do not go knock on doors and rather try to get there at times of day when they might be out working on cars or cooking. But that's one pending sweep. And then we also did a count of Milwaukee yesterday, where there are also same number, 48 RVs, vans, trailers, some structures, and then any number of miscellaneous cars and trucks, some of which it's difficult to tell if they are workers who have just parked for the day or if they're more permanently in their vehicles, but that will be swept. And again, this is actually, that may be the one that's the 21st. The one at 11th Street actually had a 4-week notice posted, and that's the first time I've seen one of those. The issue down there is we have done a count of over 200 vehicular campers in the tide flats. And so those are going to be out. Those are, unlike the tents where you have solos that somebody was just describing of onesies and twosies around town. That's what happens. And there's a lot of people out that have been swept that are solos. These vehicles are often 40-foot Winnebagos and large vehicles. And so I know some of those are moving up to Green River on the River Road up there, but we could also expect to see those moving about town in the coming days as these sweeps are launched. Some of the vehicles are inoperable. Many of them do not have current tabs. They lack insurance, they lack gasoline. So it's going to be a bit of a mess. I mean, this is kind of a new thing. I've watched 13 sweeps since last fall, almost exclusively tent encampments, but now that they're moving into vehicular encampments, we should see the collateral damage, if you will, coming from these sweeps. So stay tuned. I mean, that's what's coming up next. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And I see your hand, Jeffrey.
Some recent things have come up in regards to not having tabs and whether that vehicle is legal or not. The Long versus Seattle case indicates that if somebody claims that this is their house, this is their home, then it cannot be impounded. It has to be moved maybe, but it cannot be impounded if they claim it is their home. And this was issued by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals this last year.
So it might be time to set up another visit from the folks who are doing the vehicle home work in Seattle to talk with us about that and get that a little more clear again, especially for new people who haven't been here.
Yeah, Reverend Bill Curlin, the guy I've been working with, I can get him to the coalition. I can do that.
Let's talk about that in the planning meeting. Anyone else who has ideas around that, you're welcome to come to the planning meeting after this meeting. Anyone else have something from the streets, news from the streets? All right. I am looking and I am not seeing Jarrell, but I don't know if somebody else from the Pierce County AIDS Foundation is here. If you are, will you speak up? And if not, we will postpone his spotlight. If he shows up, we'll have him do it. Oh, Patricia. I see your hand up but you're muted.
I'm trying to get off mute. Can you hear me? I
Yes.
just wanted to say as regards to the vehicle, there's laws, but there's also the vehicular laws, which like you still have to have your plates and registration and stuff before they can impound it. And if they're past 45 days, they can impound a vehicle. Thank you.
All right, so some more clarity around that would be good. And so because I didn't see anyone, oh, Keith. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Keith, social worker at Virginia Mason Franciscan Health. I wanted to just share as a Tacoma resident. I sit on a Tiny Homes Community Advisory Council, and I know that we have a TPD liaison that comes to that meeting, who I think also has confirmed that they cannot tow vehicles that are residences. And I don't know if Joe Purva can maybe help get contact information for maybe one of the TPD liaisons to come to next week's meeting to help clarify that for this group.
That's an excellent idea.
Not to throw Joe out, but.
So that, I think there's a question out there for you, Joe. Did you want to answer it, or do you want to postpone it until the after meeting?
I think I have the contact information. I just don't know if it's my place to share it.
Okay, let's maybe talk after. Thank you for that, Keith. And it's good to get people into the conversation because sometimes I forget who all is here. Sometimes I think we all forget all of the people who are here. So we will move on and not do the partner spotlight until we have somebody from the Pierce County AIDS Foundation. If there's some breakdown in communication, we'll work on getting them here next week. So we had set up for 9:25. Now let's hope that we do have, Cece, are you game for doing the intros?
I don't, where's the agenda?
Oh,
I don't-
sorry, it's posted in the, I'll do this since, and maybe you can work on the community updates. This was a last minute decision to do this co-hosting, so.
Bet you can't tell.
So, Carolyn and Michael, are you in the room here? Yes, there we go.
Yeah, we're
So,
both here.
Very good. It's really exciting. In fact, I know that Rob was even talking about taking a break from his vacation. I don't know if he did or not, to hear these two talk about a project they're working on that's very relevant to this group. And most of you probably know Carolyn Wise from her participation in this coalition for quite some time. And Mike who is here with her to talk about the research that the demo project they're doing. You want to take it away?
Yeah, I can go ahead and get us started, and thank you all for having us here today. I'm Mike Craw. I'm a faculty and director of the public administration program at the Evergreen State College, and just want to say at the outset that this is a project that isn't just me and Carolyn, but rather we're sort of here representing a much larger work group that that was assembled to carry this project forward. So I'm sort of thinking of ourselves as spokespeople here rather than as leaders on this particular project. And I do have some slides to share if I can do screen sharing, if that's possible.
Teresa, you're muted.
I'm checking to see if Garrett is making that possible.
Okay, thanks, Garrett.
Sorry, I was working on homeless count numbers. What am I supposed to do?
Oh, it's okay. I think I can too. I'm going to enable share screen. There you go.
Oh, much obliged. Yeah, let's go ahead and share this. And yeah, so let me just sort of introduce this the project a little bit here. So this work really sort of emerged out of an opportunity that the Tacoma, Lakewood, Pierce County Continuum of Care received in late 2020. Our COC was one of 8 across the country selected as part of a racial equity demonstration project that the Department of Housing and Urban Development put together. And the basic goal of that project was for each of the 8 participating COCs to identify one concrete improvement that they could make that would advance racial equity in their coordinated entry system. So in response to that, the Continuum of Care formed a small work group to put together an idea and plan for a project. That group came together in October 2020. And from there, we really sort of expanded the work group to include representation from among those who have lived experience with homelessness, representing many of the nonprofit organizations working on homelessness in Pierce County, local governments working on homelessness, and then universities including Evergreen and Carolyn Wise, who is, as you all know, is from the University of Puget Sound. So what we did in the study, basically, ultimately, we decided it was most important to hear directly from Black families about their experiences with the coordinated entry system. So earlier this year, we worked with the Brotherhood Rise Center to carry out interviews with 16 Black families who've been through the coordinated entry system in Pierce County within the past year about their experiences. And one of our chief conclusions from that really focuses on the importance of the client-caseworker relationship. That particular relationship is crucial to getting successful outcomes in placing people and families into permanent housing. And so our recommendations really sort of revolve around how do we bolster that relationship. And ultimately, we really put a lot of focus on a unique partnership that developed between Catholic Community Services and the Tacoma Ministerial Alliance to try to improve that relationship. So that's what Carolyn and I are going to focus on discussing today, is the findings from that interview study. Our starting point really as a work group came from the Spark report in 2018. And as most of you know, the Spark report recognize that it not only identifies that racial inequity is a reality in homelessness and in providing coordinated entry systems across the board, but that it's a reality also within Pierce County. And in addition, the Spark report also went to some lengths to try to identify what are some of the causal factors in that. And one of the ones that was most important for us as a work group to focus on was their finding that homelessness is both a function of economics, but it's also a function of what they call network impoverishment. That those experiencing homelessness not only are themselves impoverished, but they lack social and network relationships that can help provide a safety net that will keep them out of homelessness. And so that particular finding of the Spark report also sort of informed how we approached this particular study, and ultimately sort of led us to think more carefully about this relationship that develops between coordinated entry clients and coordinated caseworkers. So to carry this work out, we wanted to be really mindful as a continuum of care about making this a project that would not be really an academic study so much as it would give voice to those who normally don't have voice in the coordinated entry system. So as we were beginning the study, really it was sort of myself, Delmar Algie, and Anne Marie Edmonds with Pierce County Department of Human Services sort of took the lead role in the first couple months. And we recognized pretty early on that what will work best for this kind of project is a community-based participatory research approach, which basically holds that really sort of the study design from its very foundations ought to come from those who are most affected by the results of the study will have. So in putting together a work group and inviting people to participate, we try to be very mindful to bring in a wide variety of people who work in the coordinated entry system, both coordinated entry providers, the local governments of Pierce County, Lakewood, City of Lakewood, City of Tacoma, and those with lived experience in homelessness. And we all try to be very mindful of bringing people in with those. We also had, because of the relationship with Department of Housing and Urban Development, we had access to 3 HUD technical consultants who assisted us throughout the course of the project. So just wanted to be mindful about that. So over the course of early 2021, our focus really was on designing a study and identifying the kinds of questions that we ought to ask if we were going to try to understand the experience that Black families have with the coordinated entry system. So the ultimate questionnaire and research study design emerged out of participation from everybody on this work group. And that makes us a little bit unique compared to other kinds of studies. It's not often that you take this community-based participatory research approach to try to hear voices, but in my experience, this really worked effectively to try to make sure we're asking the right kinds of questions to try to shed light on what the experiences of Black families have been with coordinated entry. One of the things that we focused on as a work group in particular that drove us was to try to better understand a unique partnership that emerged out of the CHIRP program between Catholic Community Services and Tacoma Municipal Alliance in 2020. So one of those CHIRP partnerships brought together Tacoma Municipal Alliance to work with Catholic Community Services. And the basic idea behind the partnership was that Tacoma Municipal Alliance had been involved in homelessness services for quite some time in Pierce County, but they wanted to expand what they were doing to be more active participants in the coordinated entry system. And so they partner with Catholic Community Services in order to gain that expertise and access to the coordinated entry system that Catholic Community Services could provide. So this was a rather unique, we see this as a rather unique kind of partnership, in large part because the Tacoma Municipal Alliance has a status within Tacoma's Black community as being what we consider to be a trusted messenger. They have long-lasting and deep ties among Black families in Tacoma, something that Catholic Community Services is less strong at. At the same time, Catholic Community Services has the expertise and resources and access to coordinated entry that Tacoma Municipal Alliance could use in order to help TMA enter into the coordinated entry system. So the partnership, the main advantage of the partnership is it provides a way for a trusted messenger within the Black community to play a more active role in helping people through the coordinated entry system. And therefore, our hypothesis really was that, well, this partnership probably would result in a better experience for Black families going through coordinated entry, because they're working with an entity and with caseworkers who are part of that community and well integrated in that community and are trusted by members of that community, more so than would be the case with Catholic Community Services or associated ministries. So we wanted to focus in particular on understanding that relationship and how that evolved. And then at the same time, as we were digging into this work as a work group, one of the things that we really came to focus on was that the way in which that partnership with TMA and CCS, the main advantage that it would have in coordinated entry is in the greater attention it gives the client-caseworker relationship. That by being more culturally competent, the Tacoma Ministerial Alliance would be in a better position to build trust with the client and therefore be in a position to get more information about the needs of the client, to work more collaboratively with the client in terms of identifying what their needs are and identifying a permanent housing solution that will work for them, and providing a way for the client to be able to navigate a really complex coordinated entry system more effectively, and for them to persist through the various kinds of hiccups and challenges that inevitably occur when a family is moving through the coordinated entry system. So we were really mindful about that relationship and wanted to understand that relationship more as a goal in the interviews that we conducted. So Carolyn, if you're here, I'll turn things over to you. Carolyn was our point person really in developing the methodology and helping us to see that part of the study through. So Carolyn, I'll turn things over to you to pick it up on the methodology we use.
So I'm in a car around Wenatchee driving. I can see you, Mike, but I turned my mute off. Can you see and hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Carolyn, and I'll just go through the slides as we need to here.
I'll just do my voice then.
Yeah.
So just continuing from what Mike was talking about, the methods were developed by many of the people on that large team and vetted by a diverse group, but we intentionally wanted the interviewers and recruiters to be people of color who were experienced with trauma-informed care. And so we developed a kind of partnership with the Brotherhood Rise Center, who were fantastic in having their staff participate and be trained in doing the bulk of the work. Associated Ministries was also critical in helping with the recruitment process, but Brotherhood Rise Center did recruitment and all of the interviewing. And Pierce County provided a sort of randomized list of Black heads of households who used coordinated entry in the last year. We didn't have the capacity to recruit people, enough people to compare the Tacoma Ministerial Alliance clients in particular. A lot of people, this was right in the middle of the inclement weather and COVID crackdown. So from the call list of Black clients, we just sort of got whoever was available to come through. And most of the audio tape of the interviews were audio taped, a few were in person. And demographic.
Carolyn, you might turn off your video and just use the audio because you're breaking up quite a bit.
Okay, Carolyn, are you still there? We'll wait for Carolyn to come back. I'll pick it up a little bit more. So the Brotherhood Rise Center really was took the lead role in actually conducting the interviews on behalf of the COC work group. And those happened primarily in December and January, December 2021 and January 2022. And we use those interviews basically to, we transcribe those interviews. We received some support from Carolyn students at the University of Puget Sound in order to help make that happen, and coded the interview results in order to come to some of the conclusions that we did for this particular study. Carolyn, are you back yet? So just to give you an overview, we ultimately had hoped to interview about 25 or 26 participants. We actually were able to interview about 16 Black families as part of this study. The majority of those households were currently experiencing homelessness. And most of the households turned out, even though we randomly sampled, most of the households we interviewed were from associated ministries, with a smaller number representing people who went through coordinated entry with Tacoma Ministry Alliance or with Catholic Community Services. We had a pretty good distribution of people who used different kinds of coordinated entry. You know, a number of them indicated that they went through diversion, and then a number used both priority pool and diversion. So overall, we feel like we got a pretty good representation of Black families that went through the coordinated entry system. And what we found overall was pretty interesting. We get a mixed bag in terms of satisfaction with coordinated entry overall. But one of the things that sort of stands out is that satisfaction with caseworkers was something that turned out, in our view, to be really sort of important to the person's overall experience with the coordinated entry system. When families are going through coordinated entry, their point of contact and their understanding with that really sort of comes from that caseworker. And so the relationship that evolves with the caseworker is what really turns out to be most important, understanding whether they not only receive a successful outcome, but whether they evaluated themselves, whether it was a successful experience for them overall. I'm going to kind of skip down to a couple of other things here, and come back to some of the things that came out as really important with respect to their relationship with the caseworker. Pretty consistently, when the respondents were talking about their relationship with the caseworker, the things that stood out as being important really were having consistent communication, you know, having that constant point of contact, knowing what's going on, and not feeling like you've been neglected or dropped off. Those turned out to be really important in underscoring the evolution of a trustworthy relationship, one where the participant felt like they could be honest and direct with the caseworker about what their needs are and what they needed to have happen when it came to their finding permanent housing needs. The ones that really value that relationship the most indicated they felt not just comfortable, but like the caseworker was the person who shared their experience, who understood what they were going through. And all that speaks to how important it is for that caseworker to be in a position where they can convey that, where they have some shared understanding, either through personal experience or because they're a trusted member of the community that the client is a member of. When we first, oh, sorry.
Oh, keep going. When you get to the last slide, let me see if I can, the one on, keep going.
Okay, yeah, I was just started talking about some of the themes that came up with caseworkers. Did you want to chime in at all, Caroline? So I talked about some of the positives. You want to jump in on some of the negative ones?
Sure. And if I get cut off, you just jump in again.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And then negative, I'm assuming you talked about. The positive is kind of the flip side, that in the caseworker relationship in particular, some of the things that were really frustrating for people is not getting called back, or not having people return messages, or just the lack of, I mean, I think that was really a big one, and it was related to a feeling that the system and the relationship wasn't effective, and there wasn't kind of reliability, trustworthiness. And and a lot of comments about wanting more communication, frustration that there was not enough communication, and that things were a bit confusing. Want to go to the next slide?
Yeah, so Mecta, key findings and recommendations.
Yeah, so this is kind of our summing up slide, where we also took liberties to make some recommendations, and informed by that larger group that you saw. And so one of the take-home points is that the caseworker relationship matters, especially the amount and reliability of communication. And this is a big one because we know that there's often not enough resources for caseworkers to be in constant communication over time with their clients as they're navigating. And so advocating for caseworkers to have that bandwidth and that flexibility seems like it's really important. And trust is also important, both with the caseworker and with the system itself. And trust is a multifaceted and hard thing to create. And so cultural competency is definitely a piece of the picture, as well as that theme of the consistency of communication and follow through. And then also some of those frustrations around the housing resources not being really affordable and available feeds into trust in the larger system. The third bullet is that the coordinated entry system is complex and uncertain, even as the providers are trying to be clear and be, well-trained and providing resources. But it is a lot to track, and the timelines for engaging and then having to re-engage when things aren't going well are often confusing. And so having ways for people to
Oh, Carolyn, I think you're breaking up again. But I'll try to finish Carolyn's thought here. One of the things that, oh, wait. Oh, Carolyn, are you still there? So one of the key things, though, that I think really sort of comes out from this is, and the connection that we make back to this unique partnership between Catholic Community Service and Tacoma Institute Alliance, and what we think is really valuable about that sort of approach that was taken there is the fact that because that client caseworker relationship matters so much and the quality of it matters so much, that it is especially important to be mindful about cultural competence in developing that relationship. And organizations that can provide that sort of cultural competence, that status as a trusted messenger, can really has the potential to greatly improve that relationship and lead to much better outcomes. So we can't really conclude a whole, so those are sort of preliminary conclusions. And from there, we're hoping to be able to build on that just a little bit more. So I can open things up to questions. I saw something in chat about target universalism, or asking to talk about target universalism. So I'll just address that really quickly. Targeting, this one of the things about this study I think that's really important is that is the extent to which it underscores the importance of a targeted universalist approach in thinking about delivery of coordinated entry services. What we found here is that because that client caseworker relationship is important and trust building is important, that it's important to be mindful about where clients are coming from. And that's inevitably going to be affected by race, by family, household composition, and can therefore be enhanced by that, by taking an approach that that is mindful about that. And target universalism encourages exactly that. And Janet, I see your hand is up. Would you like me to, Therese, would you like me to just kind of call on people, or would you like to manage?
I'd like you to go ahead and call on people, but maybe you can stop sharing the screen.
Oh, sure. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, Janet, would you like to jump in?
Yes, thank you. This is a great presentation, but you bring out the academician in me. What I've got is an observation of I think might be a limitation of the methodology, which has to do with the characteristic of your sampling size. And I'm going to give you an example of what I mean. Basically, all of your partners in this particular project, Brotherhood Rise, CCS, TMA, Associated Ministries, they're all exceptionally wonderful for us here in Pierce County, but they're all faith-based. And for instance, Wednesday, when the Medical Reserve Corps team went out as an outreach team to an encampment, a very large encampment, we met a woman who was newly homeless since February, first time experiencing homelessness, 50 years old, white, homeless because of a partner abuse of a rental situation, recently raped, and another heartbreaking story. But in the experience of becoming homeless, she lost her faith. So she now says that she is not a Christian. She doesn't have faith in God. How can there be a God? Is there, when people experience homelessness, is there also a lack of faith? And then would a possible barrier of engaging with a CE worker or a case manager, them having a faith-based employer, would that be a problem in doing your study?
I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm going to chime in, Jan, with this one because it's a great question that reflects the diversity of people experiencing homelessness. So there won't be a one-size-fits-all. But as you probably all know, all of the religious-based organizations serve everybody. And I don't think religion is part of the scripting of the coordinated entry process. But the point you bring up is probably important for, again, further research, but also remembering that religion can be something people don't identify with or a barrier. And the 211 system was the primary method that these families used as a first point of contact. And then they were called back often or given a referral. So that, I mean, that is one way to honestly sort of take religion out of the
Oh, sorry, Carolyn, you're.
But you make a good.
Yeah, no, I'll add as well that, we want to, of course, recognize that people are coming from different places. And you want to be mindful about generalizing too much from one particular case. But for many people, that their relationship with a church or so on is also an entry point to coordinated entry. So we can't generalize from that experience to people who don't come into the system that way. Teresa.
So I actually think it is significant that with such a small sample, you found that more people who went through the Ministerial Alliance had a positive experience than those who went through other places. I think that is interesting, that you were able to even draw some conclusions from the study, even though, as you say, it's a small sample, but that's still interesting. I wondered about when you talked about the negative impacts, because you had 10 responses to that, that indicates to me that there were 6 people who didn't have negative information to put in there. But some of those, it was more than 10 responses. So my other guess is that some of those people who had one kind of negative experience also had another kind of negative experience. So I'm wondering how many people actually talked about it mainly in positive terms and how many people mainly talked about it in negative terms.
Carolyn, you want to take a stab at that?
Sure. We had questions about challenges and difficulties and about positive experiences. So nearly everyone had something to say that was both positive and negative. So it's sort of hard to tell what the balance of people was. And in the written report, which we can make available to the coalition, has some of the data about satisfaction. And it was also all over the board. So people weren't right in the middle. There were some more satisfied and some less satisfied for sure. And again, it's such a small sample. I don't think sort of overall satisfaction with the system or any particular agency is really going to be generalizable. I mean, I would be really hesitant to use that as a goal, but to say there's a huge diversity of sort of positive and negative things, and then the qualitative seems more important about what was it that people experienced as positive. I'll also say, I'm not sure if Mike mentioned this, that the majority of the interviewees were still homeless at the time they were being interviewed, many of who went through coordinated entry many, many months before. So the things they were happy or unhappy about are important for them to continue engaging with the system, given that housing was still something they hadn't successfully accessed.
Jay, do you want to jump in?
Two things. One, I understand that your sample size is mightily small, but in that experience, did you also look at how many times a person had been homeless? Had they reoccurred? Are they back in the system? How long had they been in the system before they got there? And was their dissatisfaction equal to the amount of time that they had been there? I am previously homeless. And so for me, a lot of times the system over time would change, but certain aspects of it would not. And one of the things that I had a problem with was religion. I am pagan, and it blocked me from a lot of services. But the current system is different than when I was homeless, and we're not seeing as much of that. But it is still a concurring thing for people that have been previously homeless, that religion was a problem for a while, and a lot of us do stay away from religious-based services because of that. So that may be something you guys might want to look at a little bit more, is that you're not going to have it there because they're not going there.
Yeah, thank you for that. What I can tell you, I'm looking at my notes here, that 9 of the 16 had been homeless 3 or more times. We didn't ask for or get detailed information about how long people had been homeless or how many times, but just listening to the transcripts, you know, that's the vast majority. And I feel like people did have multiple touch points and times, you know, interacting with the system. And sometimes it was confusing in terms of when they were talking about positives and negatives. You know, there were times things were very frustrating or off-putting, and other times they were more positive. I think that's the reality, right? There's just a lot of different experiences somebody can have trying to navigate through lots of different people and agencies. And the theme about religion, I think that's just so important. I mean, I think we should all listen to that and think about, it is true that most of the big providers are supported, funded, I don't know, through religious organizations, but the accessibility issue and the welcoming issue and how to make that not a barrier is something I'm hearing you point to, and I think that's really important. People didn't mention religion in a positive or negative way. It's interesting in the course of those interviews. And again, we focus mostly on the coordinated entry process. I know I've heard and did some other research. Once people are in a transitional housing program or other religious-based housing setting, I think religion can be much more of an influential factor, you know, again, sort of off-putting or a good fit or a bad fit, because people are living in, you know, 24 hours in that situation. But with coordinated entry, people didn't mention that as a theme in our sample.
Well, this is great to have something so fresh off the press be presented here. And thank you both for your time and for answering our questions. And please, anyone who has any remaining questions, please put them in the chat. I'm hoping, I know Carolyn is on the road, and so special shout out to you for joining us despite the fact that you have somewhere else to be. And I don't know if Mike, can you hang around for a few minutes in case there are questions that go in there?
Yeah, I'll do what I can to respond. I also put a copy of the report into the chat as well, so you can download that if you'd like to see the study findings.
Thank you for that. It's wonderful to have you, and we hope to keep hearing about the good work that goes on around research in an area that's so important to the people who come here to these meetings. So nice job.
Thank you all. Yeah, no, I see a couple people in the room who were on the work group too, and also want to thank them for being part of this project.
Well, go right ahead. Who are these people?
Yeah, I saw Alan's here, so I just want to say shout out to Alan for his hard work on this project. And who else? Valerie. Valerie is also was important as we were getting started. So just want to acknowledge them and their efforts on this as well.
Well, thank you. So we are going to kind of tag on to what we just heard with the next part of this meeting. And this is our breakout group time. So Tim is ready with his pen, I think. And we were going to do this last week, and we kind of decided based on the presentations this week coming and the fact that we had a short bit of time there to move it to this week. So we did a little prep around this. If you weren't here last week, it doesn't matter. You're going to be able to join in this conversation just fine. But we're talking about coordinated entry. So Garrett, are you ready to put us into rooms when we're ready? Are you able to do that? Okay, thank you. So typically we go into rooms of about 5. And we're going to, the question that is being asked here is, it's in the agenda too, but it's basically, what are your ideas for how our community could make coordinated entry work better? So it's a chance for us to talk in small groups about an issue that some of you are going to have a lot of information about, some less. For those who are new to the whole idea of coordinated entry, please note that Garrett put a link in the chat for learning about it, but don't go there now. Just come and listen to other people who are talking about it. So there's often a lot of emotion around coordinated entry and how well it works or doesn't work. And I like the way Rob posed this question because it really is a community effort. It's not about any single organization. I also want to point out that on the last slide, I think it was in the recommendations, the bottom thing that was noted there was the need for more housing. So we all recognize that we can have a really good process for pointing people at services if we actually have services for them to engage in. So keeping that in mind and keeping that in mind that what we want are some good suggestions, your thoughts about what could we, in talking about what we can do to make it better, you're probably going to talk a bit about what's not working so well from your perspective. Any questions about what we're talking about? All right, I hope you have a good conversation.
All right, how long did we decide we were going to spend on this?
We have that for 15 minutes.
15 minutes. All right. So we'll also post that question in the chat again once you're in the rooms, but off you go.
Thanks.
We are all back in the room.
So I want to start out by saying, by apologizing to Timothy because I did not do the thing that Rob normally does, which is say, please have someone in your room take notes and put them in the chat. So if you did that because you've done this so many times, thank you and congratulations. If you didn't, please do put your comments in the chat. And if I need to do penance by trying to help collect them, Timothy, I will do that. But there it is. Please do put some notes in there because this was the whole purpose of this was to get, oh, good, there's somebody doing it already. What a great team. I also want to welcome you back and hope you had a productive conversation. Garrett said something that has stayed with me, and talking about coordinated entry when people get upset about it, that people got an airport, coordinated entry is an airport, and people were expecting a plane. And I think if you think about that for a minute, it seems incredibly true to me that you can, and also the point about you can have a wonderful station for people to wait in that is doing everything it's supposed to do. But if you don't have any destinations, it's not actually going to look like it's working very well. So that is a little bit of a frame. And we are not going to talk about what you said today, but we will. Timothy kindly has agreed to collect all these, and he will do a feedback session for us next week about what got put in there today. So thank you for that. And Cece, I don't know if you are you here?
I am here.
Are you game for doing the government update portion and
Sure.
the rest?
Sure, it's time for us to have government updates. It's to understand what current efforts are underway. And we're going to start with City of Tacoma. Is Caleb here? Caleb, are you here? Okay, so let's go to
Actually,
Jeff
I see
Rogers.
Caleb in the list.
Oh,
I'm going to ask him to unmute. I don't know. Well, why don't you carry on and we'll ask him to come
okay.
back.
So next up is Jeff Rogers, and I see Jeff. Morning, Jeff.
Good morning. I do have a couple updates to provide today. The first one being that we are in the process of finalizing a request for proposals, or RFP. We're going to be releasing some funding for our inclement weather program. So you can look forward to that coming soon. Another thing that we're working on is that we had a notice of funding opportunity that was released for looking for a third-party capacity building organization to provide support to our current and interested applicants for our funding here for our homeless funding at Pierce County, targeting by and for organizations to help them develop the capacity to qualify for our programs, and those we currently fund to help them increase and expand on their successes with the funding they receive from us. So that process of that RFP has closed. So we're reviewing applications now, and hopefully we'll be making an announcement soon of who that agency will be that will be working with some of our providers or potential providers. Excuse me. And lastly, we had another funding process, and it is known as our CE System Enhancement NOFA, or Notice of Funding Availability, where we were seeking agencies to help us expand system navigation, open cultural hubs, which we currently have one cultural hub program we fund. And so those award announcements have been made. They haven't been posted yet, but once they're posted, we will let you know. But they're funding CE activities at different organizations, system navigation, and cultural hub work is the three targeted areas that we're focusing on doing contracts with that are targeted to start July 1st. That is my update.
Hey, thank you, Jeff. So Caleb, did you want to say anything? I see you're on the screen. Okay, Caleb's on mute. All right. Let's move over to Valerie.
Morning. Hi, Cece.
Hey,
It's good to
Valerie.
see you. Missed you. Been a while. So
Yeah.
I am Valerie with Pierce County Human Services Rental Assistance Program. So as of today, from March 13th, 2020, we've spent $153 million on rental assistance. That includes very minor utility assistance as well. We have about 40 million to go, with 35 of that is already in our account, but we have 5 million coming from the state. And we do plan to be out of funding the fourth quarter of this year at the latest. So we are encouraging folks, if you know low-income households who are past due on their rent and were impacted by COVID, to please apply in the portal and get on that list, because we will be giving a notice here in the next couple of weeks or months about a closing of new applications. So just a heads up. We are still working toward the design of the permanent program. A notice of funding availability will come out as soon as the state finalizes their requirements, and that will be a much smaller program. We will not have $153 million in that, but we will have a permanent program moving forward for rental assistance. So more to come on those things, but get your folks to apply if they have been impacted by COVID, and we'll get you linked up with the right landlords if need be.
Wonderful. Thank you, Valerie. Okay, Jenny from the Pierce County Health Department. What do you have for us, Jenny?
Hi, good morning, everybody. It's nice to be here as always. So in the world of COVID, we are seeing case rates drop for the second week in a row, which is good. They're continuing to plateau, and our hospitalization rate has gone up. So that's not great. And we are in the high community level as defined by the CDC. The most important thing I can say about that is that the CDC at that level of community spread or existence of COVID, they do recommend masking in indoor public spaces. So I know many of us have been taking our masks off, and really we should be a little bit more careful in large, public gatherings indoors in terms of mask wearing. We are, sorry, my dog is laying on my lap and she's like dreaming, so she's making silly noises. Sorry for that. Shelter outbreaks. We have only had one outbreak recently, so that is good news. And we've been seeing fewer COVID outbreaks in businesses and care facilities this week, which is the first decrease in a while. So that's looking good. Excuse me. I'm going to share resources, of course, on how we can all help to stop outbreaks. I'll share some the quarantine and isolation tool from the CDC as a reminder for folks. I will share our data page. Our testing team is still working with shelters to get testing kits, and shelters are able to request mobile test support if they need it. And if you are with an organization who would like test kits, you can also get those from us. We have a good inventory right now. So I will share the email that you can send us an email, or you can fill out a form to request test kits. I do have some important updates to share about isolation and quarantine processes. So as of today, we will no longer have isolation and quarantine phone line service or placement coverage on Saturdays. So the process for folks remains the same. If you are with an organization, if you need, if someone is suspected or is COVID positive and needs a safe place to isolate or quarantine, there's a number to call, and I will share that. And then if it's on a Saturday, you will need to leave a voicemail and someone will get back to you immediately the next day on Sunday. This is a change for us. The good news is that since cases are plateauing, our bed capacity is high and we're seeing fewer outbreaks. We're hoping this isn't too much of a problem. We've seen a very low call volume on weekends. We recognize that the need may still arise, and we're continuing to work on a more sustainable, cost-effective plan for isolation and quarantine going into the future. So any questions on that, please let me know. Monkeypox virus is still a problem. The cases in the US have doubled. We still only have 2 cases here in Washington State and King County. And so that is something to keep your eye out for, and I will share some CDC resources there. Congenital syphilis is a huge concern. If you work with people who are pregnant, please reach out to me so I can connect you with our STD team for resources. Marcus Taylor, who's a community health worker here at the department, has been partnering with outreach teams and with MRC, and we've been going out to encampments to talk to folks directly about syphilis. If you would like to connect with Marcus for some additional support for your organization, I can help you to do that. And then finally, I'm going to share our adult immunizations page. I just want to remind folks that there's a program called the Adult Vaccine Program that provides free vaccines, hepatitis, Tdap, measles, mumps, rubella, shingles, flu, all those adult vaccines for folks who are uninsured or underinsured and 19 years old or older. And we have lists of participating pharmacies and clinics where you can send folks to get those free vaccines. So I'll share that information. I know I said that was the last thing, but I also wonder if folks saw the New York Times article about Houston that came out a couple days ago. I shared it with Teresa, but I can also share the link for folks. It was really interesting in talking about their homeless response system and their housing first model. Really great article. So check that out. And then I just want to say, I have been sending sort of a weekly digest of all the information that I share at this call by close of business on Fridays. So check the coalition. I assume everyone here is on that list, but if you ever need anything from me, you can feel free to email me directly. Any questions?
Jenny?
Yes, ma'am.
Valerie had a question in the
hey,
chat.
Valerie.
Valerie has a
Hey,
question.
I was just curious, Jenny, if you think the decrease in the positive test results is because we're all testing at home, since the state and the feds were so awesome at keep sending me tests at home.
No, it's like good problem to have, kind of. Yeah. Yes. So the talking about case rates and is always a little problematic. And so I should always sort of offer a caveat to that, because you're absolutely right. Our data folks sort of warn about, they say that hospitalizations are sort of a better indication and more accurate indication because case numbers are greatly impacted by the fact that we're testing at home and not reporting those testing results and stuff. So yeah, we should, the data we have are the data we have, but looking at cases is always an imperfect way. So that's why we still want to just do what we can to stay safe, get vaccinated, all of those things. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up. It's a good question, and I should mention it as an asterisk when I share those data.
As someone who has tested their children 5 times this week, I figured it might be important.
Yeah, it does definitely factor into those data. Yeah, thanks, Valerie.
Thank you, Jenny. Any other questions for Jenny?
I saw one from Donald. I don't know if you could see his hand.
I can't. Oh, go ahead, Donald.
Question for me, Donald?
I also see one from Patricia.
About reporting.
So it's a lot of things that I heard, and I should be able to go to the email, the Homeless Coalition's email, and to get to all this information that's been said at this time, as far as the housing, helping with the assistance to a rental, housing for the young man, which I used to get from Catholic Services and some of the other services. But I need that information. So can I go to the email, the Homeless Coalition email?
That's a great question. Donna, what I was referring to from the information I shared is that I will share the information that you just heard from me. I will share that out to the coalition email. So if you're on that list, like if you got the email about today's meeting and you're on that list, you will receive the information from me, because I know I talk really fast and I say a lot of things and I share a lot of links, but I will put it in a summary email. As far as what's on the coalition website, maybe someone else can speak to that, or Valerie could send you information about the rental assistance.
Yeah, for rental assistance,
Brandy.
I'll put the website in the chat box for you.
Yeah, I'm in a meeting, but I'll just turn it down. Okay, so I got a bunch of phone calls
Jenny,
from
you're not muted.
I also wanted to make a comment. I had my hand up.
Go ahead, Patricia.
Hi, Jenny. I also wanted to say, with the rise in COVID rates, if you take the self-home test but continue to have symptoms that align with COVID, try to get a PCR test. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Best practice, I think, is still like if you take a home test and you have to follow up. That's not always feasible for everyone, but if you do need a PCR or lab test, our website does have a lot of resources on where you can find that. So I'll make sure and share that as well with folks. And Patricia, I will, I have to look it up every time, but the question about where to send results, I think there's a DOH link, and I will look that up before the end of the meeting and share it.
And there's always the COVID like hotline for any like calls or questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I understand that Caleb is available now. Caleb, would you like to give us some updates, please? Caleb? Okay.
Maybe he can just raise his hand when he gets back in the room. He sent me
All
a
right.
text. I thought he was saying he was ready, but there we go.
All right, no problem. Is Jody on the call? Jody Ferguson from the emergency management team?
I don't see anybody from emergency management on.
Okay.
It's usually Ivan.
It's usually who?
Usually Ivan Tadella, but he's not on.
Oh, okay. Then we're gonna move on our agenda. The next thing we have on our
Your voice is a little muted, Cece.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have to get close to my laptop. So next, we'd like to have the update on safe sites for all. Janet, you want to handle that?
I sure do.
Thank you.
Safe sites for all. Okay. I have two nursing students here today. Brittany and Leanne, I'm talking to you. This is an example of how housing and housing insecurity is a real social determinant of health. Okay, so listen up. Our committee, which is open to everybody, is meeting on Mondays at noon on Zoom. Go ahead and register to attend. So the more, the merrier. Right now, we have three major issues on our agenda. The first one, the reason why we started, is the safe parking network. For folks who enter homelessness, often the way they enter homelessness is by living in their vehicle. And we do have hundreds, if not thousands, well, at least hundreds of people in Pierce County living in their vehicles. Our safe parking network is a success, to the point that I am pleased to announce, because Paula is muted and Paula cannot say this, but she's listening. The county, Pierce County Human Services, signed the contract, gave it to Paula. Yes, there is a God. Well, you know, for some of us, and others, I don't know, but there's Paula. Yes, signed the contract. It's a 2-year contract, over $400,000. We've got management in place. We've got churches who are interested. We've got a plan, and we're going ahead to provide even more safe parking sites for folks, because you know what? Homelessness is not over and the economy is getting worse. And so anticipating a higher rate of increase into homelessness, we just need to be prepared. So thank goodness for Paula and the team. And that's one thing that we talk about, and we're celebrating success today for that. The second thing that we talk about is how to address jurisdictions as they do sweeps. So many of us who do outreach work on the streets realize that encampments, people who live in the streets, have been, quote, swept, unquote. We shouldn't use the word sweep. It implies dirt and dust. But as jurisdictions send out teams to remove encampments, folks have to go somewhere, right? Where do they go? So the point is that should we as a coalition have a stronger response to jurisdictions as they do these sweeps? On our website, on the main page, there's a letter that we drafted and endorsed as a coalition going back to October. That October letter is sent out every time there's an announcement of a sweep by the city of Tacoma by Ed Jacobs. Ed Jacobs and Rob Huff are currently drafting and editing stronger language to the city of Tacoma in particular, that we are realizing, we need to realize that these actions by local jurisdictions do not work. They do not work. So until the coalition comes up with stronger language, you can use the letter that we have on our website, go back to October, and then, or please, all of you as individuals can send your own letters and make your own comments to jurisdictions as they make these sweeps occur for the benefit of the neighbors, we get it. The neighbors are complaining. We understand that, but it doesn't solve the matter. So that's on the action that we take on that. Our big issue that we're dealing with right now happens to do with the fact that we have weather. The surprise news is we have weather. And guess what? Sometimes weather gets really, really, really bad. So now I'm sorry that Caleb was not able to be here. I spoke with Matthew Jorgensen last Friday at that wonderful open house that Monique put on by the FOB new campsite on 82nd and Pacific Avenue. And Matthew said that he has direction by the city of Tacoma to buy a pallet of water until there's at least 8 pallets of water at stability site for our next severe heat dome that will happen. We don't know when, we know it's going to happen. The problem is, and thank you, City of Tacoma. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The problem is that not everybody who is experiencing homelessness lives within the City of Tacoma. So there are perhaps some imploring pleas going out to the county human services. And on Tuesday, we heard from at the county city council meeting, and I am so pleased that council member Ryan Mello is with us today. I don't know if he's still here, but he did show up earlier. And I know that Jeff Rogers is here, and there are things going on, but I would like to call on Sally Perkins first to give her assessment of what happened, what was presented to the Pierce County Council on Tuesday. Take it away, Sally.
Okay, so this was at a study session of the Pierce County Council, and John Barbie from the County Human Services Group was reporting. And he said, essentially, we've learned that we haven't been really prepared, that we need to do triaging, that people need to be available on weekends and after 5 o'clock. So some of the things we've been saying have now been incorporated into the county's thinking. They are going to release a NOFA for one agency to have essentially tailored services for weather emergencies. So that, I think that NOFA, if it's not out already, is going to be out soon. And they're updating all of their provider contracts to make sure that people know they're authorized to pay their people to work nights and weekends if an emergency happens at a time that is not during working hours. They are working on a policies and procedures manual. I'm not sure if it's for them or for us or for other providers. It's like a desk manual. They're working on that now. And they're planning to have a community plan that will be done by the end of August. So the good things are all of those things are being addressed. The not as good thing, and county people, my apologies if you see this differently. The not as good things is this report was made on the 14th of June. We're already in the summer weather emergency timeframe, and that we have just been flat out lucky that we have not gotten the heat that the rest of the country has gotten. But torrential rain is another problem year-round in the Northwest. And then we also know that we're likely to have smoke impacts from fires. So still concerned. My concern was this is awful late, and having a community plan that's not available till August, that means that's not going to address the summer at all. It will hopefully address the winter weather emergencies, which are different. County council members asked that wind chill and relative humidity be added as factors to be considered as contributing to a weather emergency. Wind chill for cold, relative humidity for heat, and also ice and heavy rain. Those things impact people who are living outside. And the last thing I will say is that this whole thing needs to be thought about as a series of microclimates. If you're a gardener, you know what I'm talking about. A set of tents or shelters that are in a group of trees are not going to be impacted by heat the same way a set of shelters near concrete are going to be impacted by heat. So every single situation is going to have some unique features. And what's still missing from the planning, I think, is who goes that last half a mile or 6 blocks or whatever to actually get the supplies to the people who are living unsheltered. So there's still work to be done. I considered it to be progress, but there's still a lot of questions that remain in terms of what will actually happen when our first weather emergency for the summer hits. So that's my take. If other people were on the meeting, please chime in. I may have missed things, or I might be interpreting in ways that you wouldn't. Thank you.
Patricia, you have a comment? Because I've got a little bit more to add. So go ahead, Patricia, and ask your question.
It was more of a comment about the use of language that they're calling it generally more removals than sweeps due to the individuals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Patricia. I appreciate that. And I also know that Jay Worley from Lived Experience attended that Tuesday meeting, which is great. You know, some of those meetings can just be so monotonous. But when we find out what government is and is not doing, then they are critical that we show up. On Monday, we're also going to talk about Richard Dorset has found some language, some other jurisdictions that have suggestions on triggers and thresholds responses. So he's going to bring those things to our Monday meeting. So I encourage anybody and everybody who cares about the weather, who cares about what to do about folks who may not have all the resources that those of us in our room have, to join us Monday at noon. And also we're going to be putting out things like what does heat exhaustion look like? What does heat stroke look like? What do you do? So as you're walking around and you see somebody who might be vulnerable to those kind of symptoms, do you know what to do as Joe or Jane Public? Okay, anything else? I'll just back off here.
Well, we're a little behind on our schedule, so I don't know. Oh, are you there, Cece?
Yes. So next on our schedule is the any coalition committee updates.
I don't have anything to offer today. We had meetings yesterday, but we're in the process of coming up with some things to share with the whole group. So we'll looking forward to those maybe at the next meeting.
All right. Thank you, Rosemary. Okay. So our next agenda item is good trouble announcement. If people can share what they're working.
Cece, I'm sorry. Whenever you turn your head, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Next is any good trouble announcements. Thank you for your grace, everybody. I'll do better. Any good trouble announcements?
I see
No?
Rosemary. There's Rosemary's got her hand.
Okay, Rosemary.
Know if this is good trouble or just good celebration, but I put 3 events in the chat that are happening on Sunday relative to Juneteenth. So if you're looking for something to do, either online or in person, there's something in Puyallup, something at the Washington State Museum, and something at Reston, the Waterfront Park. So those are things that you can find the information about in the chat.
Great. Thank you. I did want to mention that today is the last day for people to register for the MDC Educational Opportunity 2022 Summer Bridge Program. And what it includes is college and university tours, trio shirts, and swag bundle. Everybody likes swag. College pertinent information, lunch, educational information and tips, and access to virtual job shadows. So that's a really good program. I put the flyer in the chat earlier. So if you're interested in that, connect with us.
So we've got Courtney and Ed both have their hands up.
All right, Courtney.
Thank you. For those, something come from Maureen Howard regarding I-135 in Seattle for social housing. And the Washington State Lived Experience worked on developing that. So I feel confident in promoting it myself, although it was before I was deeply involved in the organization. And the last update I got from the I-135 team was still needing somewhat of an overwhelming number of signatures, but that included a buffer for rejected signatures that I think is rather generous. So, but the signatures have to be collected and turned in on the 20th of this month, like 2 days. So if anybody can spend the weekend collecting signatures in Seattle for I-135, it is very important and well worth your time spent. And I encourage anybody who can to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed?
Good morning. On the 26th, a week from Sunday, we'll have a homeless memorial service, the details of which are being finalized today, which means I missed my deadline to have them ready for this meeting, but I will be sending them out on the coalition listserv for everyone. Thank you.
Don't
Thank
we
you,
usually
Ed.
also put that in the calendar on the website?
Usually, yes.
Okay, so maybe we can make sure to do that so people can find it there.
Yeah.
Okay, Teresa, I'm going to hand it back over to you, my friend.
All right, well, this is where Rob usually looks at all of us and hopes that somebody's going to respond to these things. So gear up. We have two things. We have the reflection on today's meeting, which is if anybody has something you want to say about the meeting, something that went well, something that you'd like to maybe see in the future, anything like that, you can either raise your hand and we'll call on you, or you can put it in the chat. We're happy to get feedback any way it comes. And at the same time, we have anybody who wants to share a success story, because those are good for us. Oh, Jenny, go ahead. You had a reflection on today's meeting or success story?
No, I actually just wanted to make an announcement because I know some of you here know, but some of you maybe not. I am leaving Inside Passages. My last day will be June 28th. So I will be here with y'all next Friday. And that will be my last coalition meeting for a little while. I am going to work for a company called Toy Smith. I'm going to be their HR director and part of their executive leadership team. But in that role, it's a children's toy distribution company. So it's going to be a very fun environment, but they are very dedicated to the community. So I should be able to pop in every so often and say hello. As part of my role. They also give time off for community volunteering and things like that. So I should definitely be able to pop in every so often and say hello to everybody. So I just wanted to let you all know. Next Friday will be my last day with you. Feel free to reach out to me directly, ask any questions. I'm open until my last day with the organization. So.
We will miss you. You have been wonderful here, and I'm assuming that you got a wonderful person to replace you, or you wouldn't have left.
That is in process. The founder, one of the founders of the organization, Heather, is working on that as I speak right now. So more to come on that, and I'm sure there'll be a community announcement that goes out when that all happens.
Well, we won't give you your send-off today because you're going to be here on Friday, but congratulations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you.
Anyone else? Any of those items, you can announce things, you can tell us a good story. You have a couple minutes. And if no one does any of those things, we will, oh, go ahead. Shannon, I didn't see your hand, sorry.
Sorry, I couldn't raise it. I'm on a phone.
Okay.
But just really quickly, I missed you guys. I haven't been able to be on here in about 6 weeks because I was in trainings and then I was sick with COVID for a few weeks. And I passed my peer support training. So I just wanted to say that I missed you guys and I'm all better now.
Well, congratulations on the training and welcome back. And we look forward to seeing more of you, Shannon. Sorry.
Thank you.
You know, anyone else on the phone who can't raise your hand, You just have to shout out as Shannon did. I appreciate that. All right, well, it looks like we may actually be able to end just a few minutes early, which is good. We always try to do that. So anyone who can join us for the planning meeting, what happens, we'll make it right at 11 a.m. Come on back and we'll chat. Thank you all. And thank you, Cece.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.